Hey everyone, Jumpstart has just barely arrived and we're already on to spoilers for this new set, Double Masters, and everyone is excited about these alternate art cards, and some people are very excited about the reprints as well. Generally, reprints mean that, of course, you have the chance of opening something very exciting in a booster pack, and for the majority of players in my circles, typically just means that we're going to be seeing a decrease in cost for many of these cards, signaling a really good time to be picking up cards that perhaps you haven't needed right now, but could be very useful in the future. And Baleful Strix is certainly one of those cards. Now, this would probably be a $20+ card, no problem, if they hadn't done so many reprints. And you take a look, it's kind of surprising how they've peppered in these reprints over the years with this card. Obscure sets, Plane Chase Anthology, Arch Enemy Nicol Bolas. Eternal Masters is kind of mainstream. It was a rare in that set, but overall, Baleful Strix has been reprinted a ton of times in kind of a sneaky way, which has prevented it from kind of exploding in price, which it would, because this card is phenomenal. Really, really good, eternal quality card. You can play this in Legacy with zero embarrassment. It is a staple in control lists. Icefang Coatl is a similar card, which is now also seeing play in Legacy. And the ability to be a speed bump that draws a card, so good versus those creatures that have to turn sideways. So things like Tarmogoyf, Delver of Secrets, you're going to get a 2-for-1. You're going to either trade a piece of removal and you draw a card off of this, or you're going to trade a creature when they have to run their big dumb green creature into your owl and you net a card and remove their board presence. Very, very good. Pyroblast on the way down is really the only way for this card not to be inching toward victory, as if you kill it after it resolves, you're going to be down a card most of the time. So Baleful Strix, probably going to be a good time to pick up your playset once these have gotten out into the market. And I'm going to go on a couple of little economic concepts here, see if you guys are interested in hearing my perspective on economics. So reprints are going to do multiple things. Everything is multifactored. Anytime somebody tries to boil things down to a single talking point, it's really just an oversimplification. That's the bottom line. You cannot take multi-factored problems, complex systems, and reduce them down to a single point and then just predict the future with certainty. The only fools are certain. So when we're talking about Baleful Strix, I am betting that the price is going to be coming down. The other possibility here is with Double Masters, depending on the size of the print run, we could see on some of these cards increases in prices. And we've seen that historically, so there's a little bit of a precedent when we have smaller than expected print runs, when there are distribution problems, and when it's really clear that or people just speculate that there's going to be a lack of reprints in the future. So an example of that would be the run on Force of Will over the last several years since Eternal Masters. That being the flagship card of Eternal Masters really sent the signal that we're not just going to see Force of Will being jammed in future products right away. So who knows? Maybe now's the time. Maybe we'll see that in Double Masters. It's one of the most expensive non-reserve list cards out there. But that said, the market has factored that into the price, that it was not expecting a reprint right away and that supply to be increased. And in the actual sense of the word, inflation, where you have a larger supply, which ends up devaluing the cards. There just ends up with so much more of them, and that counterbalances it. And on that note, I know we're only one card in here, but Wizards doesn't set the price on anything. Wizards sets the supply, and I know that's not necessarily the biggest distinction in people's heads, but it really makes a big difference. So Wizards takes the actions ultimately that will determine prices, a big part of it, like the supply and demand, and they get to set the supply. They have a monopoly privilege. They're the only ones that are allowed to print Magic cards, and the government gives them that monopoly through intellectual property laws of trademark and copyright. And to, I think, still patent. I think they actually still have the tap concept patented, like calling it tapping with the tap symbol, but it's definitely protected by trademark, and it will be indefinitely. Trademarks you can just keep renewing, whereas eventually copyright or patents will expire. They will, as long as they keep renewing it, they will have a trademark on the mana symbols, for example. So point being they set the supply, and the supply is a major factor in determining the price, but it's not the whole thing. We have to want it as consumers. We're going to see with this VIP edition exactly what the story is. Are people going to be interested or not? So for Wizards to say, oh, this is $100, they set a wholesale price, and vendors are reluctant to sell at a loss. Those are all factors, but it's not anywhere near as simple as, for example, people saying, oh, these should be $4 boosters. It's like you'd have to have a literal totalitarian, even with a totalitarian system, you couldn't do that. People do not care about your opinion overall. Like, it's your opinion really matters in the market as one of the millions of people who get to determine demand. But your feelings about what things should be don't actually matter beyond that. So you vote with your dollars, and then the aggregate of all of those votes actually is the thing that determines the price. So if Wizards came out and said that this was a $4 booster, I'd be happy because I would be selling them at the market price. And I'm very confident that the market price would be significantly higher than $4. And I'm just the type of store that is basically just a secondary market store. Most of what I do is Magic singles. So the sealed product here, I mean, new stuff generally, it has a sticker on it for, $4 for a booster or whatever. But most of the sealed product in the store just has a market price sticker on it. And that's just something I have to explain to new players. It's like, yeah, the reason why I have all of the Masters sets, Planner Chaos, Avacyn Restored, Innistrad, all the old stuff, revised starter decks, all that stuff, it's all market price. So everything that is in short supply, anything that I can't just call up my distributor and get back in tomorrow, that's market pricing. I'll take a margin if I can buy infinite of it, and I'll work off of a particular margin. But that's just a little rant for you guys. Wizards doesn't set the price. The market sets the price. Even if Wizards did what many people would have wanted and set this at some super low MSRP, not that they do that anymore, wouldn't matter. The margins would become huge for stores, or there'd be stores that sell it at the supposed MSRP, and then people would come in and buy it and then sell it to the people who value it the most, which is just how markets work. They're incredibly efficient. I really don't worry at all about markets getting the cards to the people that want them the most. And that's really the only way you can allocate things. Either you have complete control over the system and you get to decide who gets what, which is just going to be friends of the people who are in control, or you let the market allocate it. And Magic, fortunately, is a beautiful example of that. It is incredibly efficient. You can come into my shop looking for any Magic card. If I don't have it, I can get it for you. And I generally have it, but if I don't, it's super easy for me to get. I'm connected to tons of backpackers, the largest vendors in the world, and I can just get it in. It's super efficient. So that said, we are all going to be seeing tons of new cards. That was a way longer aside than I expected to do, but on to the second card. We'll just try not to do a rant in between each one. Conjurer's Closet, Avacyn Restored, reprint. Just a commander card, basically flickering stuff out every turn. Lots of fun for the person who controls it, and you can get a lot of chain reactions going with this type of thing as well. Basically just a commander card to my knowledge, and on all of these you can expect prices to likely go down, unless this is a really short printed set, and certainly for the rares you can really expect prices to come down if this is printed in a decent quantity. I'm not sure how many booster boxes I'll be getting in. I ordered 100 or 200 or whatever it was. Basically just threw out a nonsense number that I knew I wasn't going to be getting, and we'll see. We'll see how many I get, but in the past, the Masters sets have been super allocated, and I expect that to be the case here. Expedition map just banned out of Pauper, which is too bad. I definitely think that Tron is probably the best deck in Pauper. It's an absolute savage. It's funny because it can really struggle with burn, and it's probably one of the places where burn is at its strongest. So this is like a rock, paper, scissors situation going on, but really complicated in Pauper. It really depends on your metagame, the type of deck that you're going to have the most success with, and a lot of the time in Pauper, people are just playing for fun. Of course, these will be able to tutor up the beautiful Urzatron pieces that have been printed in this set, which we'll get to in a little bit. Masterpiece or showcase version, I suppose. Yeah, technically this would be a showcase, I believe, of Expedition map. Absolutely beautiful. It's a shame you won't be able to shuffle it up in Pauper anymore, as it is I think a lot of fun to be able to take Pauper and turn it into just a work of art. That's one of the beautiful things about Magic, is it can be a form of self-expression. The deck building itself can be a form of self-expression, and then also the cards that you choose. So your deck list and the actual way that you fulfill that deck list. You can have two people that have radically different aesthetic choices when it comes to that. Sometimes it's just budget, sometimes it is an actual aesthetic choice, and I love Magic moving towards the aesthetic choice having some optionality. Like when you've got one choice version of a card, that's not as strong as giving people a variety of ways that they can showcase their style, their preference, maybe showcase their favorite artists. And I think that's a really great thing for Magic to be doing. It also adds, potentially, if they do it right, a lot of value to the packs where people will value these cards. And I think that's super important as well. I guess quick rant value, another thing that people kind of get caught up on. And I would just say, if you're trying to understand my perspective on economics and the economics of Magic, which have worked out very well for me, is value. Try and think of it as a verb. Like, Magic cards will have zero value if there's no humans. Gold will have no value if there's no humans. It's a thing that we ascribe to objects or services. People value things. Things don't have value. That's really a powerful way to think about it, to try and understand systems so you can have a model in your head that actually lines up with how the world works so you can function in the world effectively. You know, gold has certain properties which would exist with or without humans. There's the atomic weight, there's the electrical conductivity, there's the malleability. There's so many different elemental aspects to matter when you're talking about the actual characteristics. And then there's other things like utility, when we take something and we say it has use, and then there's value. And those are not the same thing. Like, economics struggled for a while, believe it or not, to really understand why gold was valued more than steel, especially when steel is necessary for human survival in a way that gold is not. But the thing is, you're never actually in a situation where you have to choose all of the steel versus all of the gold. It's not exclusionary. So that was a thing that people needed to eventually get their heads around, is there wasn't an inherent value to things. There is just a value that people ascribe, and it's kind of a rank order. So Expedition Map now has another version, which people will presumably value. I would personally value this card, and you know, that value that I ascribe to it is just going to be one vote in the market, and that will help set the price. Reclamation Sage, a reprint, a all-star in so many formats, and it's a pretty nice looking foil. Really good at blowing up all sorts of things, good with Green Sun Zenith, good in Pauper, good to pick up with Wirewood Symbiote. Just an all-around good card. Thought Reflection, commander card here at 7 mana. If you draw a card, draw 2 instead. Often can lead to combo finishes. You can get some incremental value out of this one, but you paint a big old bullseye right on your head when you're resolving a card like that. Boon Reflection, if you'd gain life, you gain twice that much life instead. Also can be part of combos or incremental growth. Not quite as daunting, depending on what you're doing with that life gain. Certain combos, of course, can wrap things up in a hurry, but if you're just looking to get giant life totals, this can be fun, though there are infinite life combos, which can kind of eliminate the need for this. Double infinity is still enough that you're not going to die from any damage other than commander damage. Champion of Lamholt. Lamholt Champion? I forget. Well, this is the German version, but this reprint likely going to, I'd imagine, be pretty low in price by the end of this. I don't think it was super expensive to begin with. Definitely a card worth picking out. It wasn't a bulk rare, but, I mean, probably going to take a big hit. Grim Lavamancer. I really love the original art on this card. I like this art. It's fine. But the original art really has this kind of Bob Pepper-esque art. He's the guy that did all of the Philip K. Dick novels. He also did a beautiful board game called Dark Tower and a similar game called Dragon Master from Milton Bradley back in the early 80s. And I'd like to see that art back on. Not to take anything away from this one, but it's not my favorite of the Grim Lavamancer art, and this did just see a reprint and jumpstart, so I wouldn't be surprised if this ends up being a bulk rare for a little while. That could be a good time to pick up Grim Lavamancers. If they end up having a 50-cent or 25-cent price tag on them, this could easily rise back up to being a $3 to $5 card if it doesn't see print for long enough. It's good in burn. It's a wizard, which is something not to forget. Wizard Tribal could absolutely become bonkers with one printing. It's already surprisingly good. Not really played very much, but you can do some very unpleasant things with Patron Wizard. The John Avon Unlands, absolutely beautiful, iconic art. These have been the subject of lithograph prints. The originals are highly coveted, and these are coming back. And they are beloved. We'll see what the price ends up being on these. Full art lands have done a good job in driving prices for the most part. They have kind of missed on occasion. The Amonkhet and Hour of Devastation ones people were not super excited about. Battle for Zendikar has finally kind of creeped up. I've done incredibly well with these over the years. Buy list prices were, literally non-existent for a while. There was a point where major vendors wouldn't even throw a nickel at these lands, and I just kept on buying tons of them. I've got, at this point, probably just several thousand, but at one point I ended up moving just a incredible volume of these to some major vendors once they started buying them back at 25 cents or 50 cents or whatever it was, probably closer to 25 cents. So yeah, that was a huge percentage move, not like tens of thousands of dollars or anything, but when you're investing and then you're getting 10x on your investment, for example, it's nice. Even if it's a few $100, those things definitely keep the lights on. And sometimes small ball is important. Not everything's going to be a home run. So keep an eye on these ones. If they're super cheap, which they very well may be, this could be something that could do well in the long term. Mana Crypt. It's a brutal reprint. They just did this in mystery boosters, and I've seen a lot of them. Like, I've sold a bunch of mystery booster boxes. I've gotten in as many as I can, and I have so few left. I probably have less than half a dozen mystery booster boxes, and my distributors at this point are just selling me like one at a time. That's something that I am not going to end up with a position in. I would have loved to have had, like 100 boxes of it or something in that range, and just ride that for the next 20 years. Just kind of pack it out once it's completely dried up in the market. But I don't think that's going to be in the cards with mystery boosters. 2020 is a really odd year, and that's really the big question with this double masters is, what is the print run going to look like? How much is there going to be? Are there going to be any unforeseen issues? But this Mana Crypt version could end up being the most in demand. Let me know what you think about this one. This is an important card for the set. It's going to have a lot of value. Cards like these really prorate across all of the, I guess it's not prorate, the composite price of a box based off of what people value the cards in versus supply and demand of the sealed product from the people that don't deal with singles is a complex kind of web. So it's not ever going to be for long that the composite price based off of all of the included cards ends up being way more than the box. The last time we really saw that, where I saw backpackers really hustling, was back in 2017 with Modern Masters 2017. Those fetch lands were a situation where you could be cracking boxes, taking those, selling the singles wholesale, not even retail, like literally selling it to vendors, turning around, getting more boxes, and going infinite. It was actually a market that was out of whack. Prices were incorrect, and eventually it got resolved. But it is exciting when that happens. It's a very fast-paced thing. You really got to turn stuff over quickly, but there are times where the market's out of whack. And a lot of that is the fact that some of the people in the market have no interest in dealing with the single side. They're interested in getting a margin. They get the product, they sell it, they have to get through as much of it as they can. If they have 30-day terms, 45-day terms, 60-day terms, whatever it is, when that bill comes due, they want to have completely recouped all of that capital. And then depending on the type of business model, they either are going to have the rest of it to sell through and be profitable, or sell some to be profitable and then withhold some of that product from their customers for the long term to be able to continually keep selling that in times where everyone else is sold out. So Mana Crypt has 2 versions right now, cards over $100. We'll see if it can withstand the value. It's going to depend. I mean, this is a 332 card set. Seems like a bunch of Mana Crypts will get opened, assuming a regular rare sheet. You're talking 121 cards, 1 of each mythic, 2 of each rare, 1 out of every 121 packs ends up being a Mana Crypt. By my calculation, that's a lot of Mana Crypts. You're talking 24 packs. What is that? Like 5 boxes would be 120. So every 5 boxes is going to be a Mana Crypt. So literally more than 1 a case. That could be a lot of Mana Crypts coming in, depending on the size of this print run. Kalya the Vast, fun alt art card, classic Commander. She was introduced in the original Commander product and has only seen a reprint in Commander Anthology, so she gets a reprint, and it's a cool looking one. I think people are going to be excited to have showcase versions of their favorite commanders, and Kalya is one of those cards that people spend a lot of money on the deck. Angels, demons, dragons, the mana base that goes along with it. It's not blue, thankfully, so that saves you a little bit on dual lands, but people go pretty all out, let's say. Not that she's necessarily the best commander for, say, CEDH, but people do like to make really good Kalya decks, and they can certainly stomp out the more casual of the commander decks, though still having a casual feel. Of course, that's the original art being reprinted in the set as well. Atraxa, another commander. This one only missing red, so a popular choice, especially in Super Friends, and people will be very excited to have this nice, beautiful version. Really interesting looking art. That Phyrexian staff there, really more closely showcasing. You can barely see it in the original, but when you take a look at this showcase one, you can really understand the connection to the Phyrexian. What are they? Collective? Let me know in the comments what it is. Like, they're like the Borg. Blightsteel Colossus, kind of a cartoony full art version. One shot robot is back. Trample, infect, indestructible, ender of games, sometimes ender of friendships. But I mean, as far as Magic cards go, I actually don't mind this. Indestructible, I find, tends to be a instructive moment for people when they first play against it. When people first face down an indestructible creature as a casual player, they feel like, oh, there's no way I could possibly beat this. And it's like, how do you get rid of it? You can't destroy it. And then they start to understand, it's like, oh, well, you could exile it. It's like, okay, there's a bunch of effects that do that. And then probably the bigger ones are like bouncing it. That's really big. Of course, with artifacts, much easier to bounce. Cards like Hurkyl's Recall have been with us from pretty much the beginning of the game. It's just a fun thing for me to see players figure out ways to handle situations that they thought were impossible to handle, and that kind of teaches people that so many things are possible in Magic. And I mean, almost nothing's impossible in Magic. So I think that's a fun lesson, and that's the original Doubling Season reprint. This one, I think people are going to love. Cute baby dinosaurs. What is not to love? And then there's the original, or was that the Judge promo version? I think that might be the art from the Judge promo, or perhaps the Masters 2. I don't know. I just jumped into this unprepared. But that brings us all the way back around. Doubling Season, one of those cards that had a reprint and has absolutely just continued to go up in value. We'll see how much it gets knocked down from this based off of the size of the print run and the overall demand. But there we go. That is the initial spoilers for this Double Masters coming out August 7th, I believe. Hopefully I didn't repeat myself too much in that economic theory. I had no real intention of ranting on that. I'll try and maybe give myself some notes next time to make sure that I don't repeat myself. And that is it. Let me know what you guys think about this type of review. Do you want them to be shorter, just focus on the cards? Do you like the insight? Do you like the talk on economics and the general principles behind playing in the other side of the game, which is the Magic market, which is really just the collective of all of us? It's all of our opinions about how much we value things at collectively that determines the value of these cards versus, when you factor in the total overall supply. So that is it for this one. I will try and keep up with this spoiler season, and when I do have these available for pre-order, you'll be able to get them on eldstimevaultgames.com. We've got a bunch of board games up already, and we'll have more and more Magic stuff as I get around to getting that all on the website, as it's becoming more and more important. We're not going to have organized play until at least the end of September at this point. So you guys helping out the channel by buying stuff from the store is always appreciated. And we were asked about a Patreon, so we're going to consider getting that going. It does seem like old-fashioned, just getting stuff that you want from us. It might be sufficient, though. So we'll see. Take care, guys. Thanks for watching.